Hey, what's up guys? I've got a raid video for you today. A couple of you are asking about some of the raid builds, and so I want to jump in, just kind of go over, there's like 3 main raid builds to use right now, and kind of go over some tips for each of the bosses, and hopefully it'll help you if you're new to Rogue or you're kind of been playing in, just trying to squeeze out a little bit more DPS for your fights. Now granted, this is more geared towards a normal heroic raider. I'm not mythic raiding anymore, so if you're trying to do mythic raiding, there's a whole bunch of good rogues that really have that like echelon of content out there for you. This is more of just heroic normal and getting started, or you're just trying to improve where you're at and some of the basics of the new builds. So I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible. Sometimes I ramble, so I apologize. But all right, we have Fatebound for single target, we have raid single target, and then we have a raid cleave. These are the 3 builds I use for normal. I'll throw up my normal parses here. Pretty good success in that. We're still doing pretty good in heroic. So the first build we're going to go over is the Fatebound single target build, and that's going to be good for Plexus. I'll link all of these builds in the description, so and which boss to use them on, so if you want to try them out. The Fatebound build that we're about to go over for single target is for Plexus, Loom, and then Fractillus, Nexus-King, and Dimensius. Okay, so all 5 of these we're going to use Fatebound. The only difference is this one's going to be internal bleeding. This one you can use either or. I still like internal bleeding on this one. And a lot of these builds also are checked with Warcraft logs. The top parses are for heroic at least. Again, mythic might be a little bit different, but for heroic and normal, these are the same builds essentially that they're using as well. So these 2 will be Fatebound with internal, Fractillus internal bleeding as well, and then these last 2 you'll just switch one talent in this build to Caustic Spatter. Okay, so I'm going to go over this for you right now. So Fatebound, again, I'll link this code in the description for you. Essentially, we're running Fatebound. Make sure you have all of these talents. The setup, we're going to have our damage increase at like 35% for our own damage amp off our talents. We have Cold Blood for our Kingsbane. I'm not going to really go into too much detail about how like the build works. I'm just going to give you the rotation so you can kind of practice it a little bit. Essentially, when we get here, you're not going to worry about ambushing in this spec. So when you're fighting these single target bosses, you're not going to open with ambush. Instead, you're going to open with a Garrote. You're going to mutilate till you get full rupture, and then you're going to mutilate. Hopefully, you get a free ambush proc. That's even better. But till you get an envenom up, and then from there, we'll Thistle Tea, Shiv. I like to throw an early Trinket, Death Mark first, and then Kingsbane in this build. Okay, so again, it'll be Garrote, mutilate, however many mutilates you need, rupture, mutilate again or ambush until you envenom, then Thistle Tea, Shiv, Trinket, Death Mark, Kingsbane, and I have Kingsbane macroed with Cold Blood. So hashtag show tooltip Kingsbane, then /cast Cold Blood /cast Kingsbane, and then that way when you press it, it'll kind of automatically trigger. You'll Kingsbane and then vanish out right after your Kingsbane. Basically, that's the best way to get all of your like double extra coins and the way your talents work. Again, maybe in another video I'll go into like real detail on how all these work, but just trying to get your rotation. Again, at the bottom here, it'll show you what I'm pressing in order, so if you want to watch it that way as well. But I'll show you the opener. The opener is really huge, and after that, it's just maintaining your bleeds, your envenom buffs, and everything else. So one more time, we're going to Garrote, mutilate till we have a big enough rupture, mutilate until we have a big enough envenom, Thistle Tea, Shiv, Trinket, Death Mark, Kingsbane, vanish, and then if you can envenom, if not, mutilate and envenom, and it's pretty much go from there. If it's a burn phase with lust or an amp phase, you can use your potion in there as well. Okay, there we go. So single target, pretend this is Plexus Sentinel. You're gonna Garrote, mutilate. We got a free proc, so that's great. We're gonna rupture here. We're gonna mutilate. We want to get up to envenom, so here we are. And now we're gonna Thistle Tea, Shiv, Trinket over here, Death Mark, Kingsbane, vanish out. We can envenom here or do a mutilate, full envenom. And then here we want to get as many like envenoms out as possible. We need to get our Garrote back up. Just watch your builds. 8 seconds. We use our second Shiv. It's up to you when you're spamming this stuff, if you want to like really spam and use your second Thistle Tea to keep your mastery buff up, but that's your opener. Okay, after this section, you're just going to keep your rotation up, so make sure you always have a Garrote up, make sure you have a rupture up, and then make sure you're like, these procs are great, so when you get the procs you can pull, and so you want to make sure you have your 2 here, and then you're just watching at this point. So Garrote, take it a little bit slow. We want to go ahead and get it. It's okay if you do like a 6 point, as long as it's above a 5. Ideally, you're doing a full Envenom, but as long as it's above 5, that'll give you that proc to keep the same flip chance. And so you're watching that. Now, with Kingsbane, there's one thing we got to note. So your first Kingsbane, you'll do Shiv, Kingsbane, you'll do your burst, and then you'll Shiv on the back 8 seconds. Your second Kingsbane typically is going to be dry, which means you're not going to use any Shivs, so that you let them recharge. And then your third Shiv, your third Kingsbane will have Shivs again, and it should line up with your death mark. But I'm going to show you a longer version of just the single target fight for Plexus, or just like imagine it's a Plexus or Fractillus essentially. And then here's the talent that we need to make sure you change. So I'm going to link the build, just make sure you change it to which one you need. We're using internal again for the first boss, the second boss, Fractillus. So we use internal bleeding. For the last 2 bosses, we'll use Caustic Spatter because there's some adds and cleave that you're going to want to do on there. Okay, before we jump into the rotation for this, a couple things to note for this build for Fatebound, single target. Deadly Poison, Amplifying Poison, and Atrophic. That's in your build here, so make sure you use that. Alright, so we're going to do the rotation here. Remember, no ambush for this build, okay? So you're just going to open with Garrote. We're going to Garrote, Mutilate, Rupture, Mutilate. If we get ambush procs, obviously we use those. Till full Envenom. Then we'll Thistlety, Shiv, Trinket, Deathmark, Kingsbane. Vanish out. We're full, we hit Envenom, otherwise we Mutilate until our full Venoms. Try to get as many as possible. If you're in like a really big burn phase, you can hit another Thistlety there. And then you're going to Shiv on the back of Kingsbane. That's your big opener, okay? Then I'll show you how we're going to cycle our Kingsbanes after that. The second one, we won't use any Shivs. The third one, we will use Shiv, Kingsbane, and Deathmark again. So I'll give you, there's going to be a longer, slower paced rotation for, just pretend this is like first boss, or second boss single target, okay? Here we go. So Garrote, Rupture, we didn't really get any procs, that's unfortunate, but there it is. Now we got a proc, we're going to Envenom here. Now Thistlety, Shiv, Trinket, Deathmark, Kingsbane, then Vanish out, Mutilate, Envenom, and we're just going to try to get as many Envenoms out here as possible. We're going to Garrote. Then on 8 seconds here, we're going to hit our Shiv. And then if you're lusting, you probably don't need a Thistlety here. We're going to do it just to make sure we get as many out as possible. And then from this point, now we just kind of manage our buffs. So we're going to need a Rupture here in a second. So we're going to Rupture and Garrote at the same time. Then we're going to hit an Envenom to get our second up. We'll use a proc. We're just kind of waiting out our Kingsbane here. This next Kingsbane, we're not going to use any Shivs, okay? It's just going to be a Kingsbane that's dry. Here's our Garrote. We're still just kind of pulling energy here. We're going to Kingsbane dry, and then Envenom. Get another one out. You can just make sure you always Envenom with at least 5 points or over. We need to get a Rupture up, but we can use this and pump out a couple more. So remember, this one's dry. And then we're on... Oh, I lagged out. Sorry about that. Lagged out. Alright. And then, so now we're just watching our buffs again. Make sure we gotta keep our Envenom buff out. Lagged out, so I kind of dropped there. Use your procs and just pull. This next Kingsbane will be able to use our Shiv with Deathmark again. So it's like, the first one you use with everything, the second one you use dry. The third one you use with everything. We want to prep this, make sure that we have everything to go for this. So we're going to go here, we're going to Envenom, Shiv, Trinket, Deathmark again, Kingsbane, and then we just do the same thing. The only thing we did not have this time was the Vanish. So we're just using this, and then we're going to Shiv here on the backside at 8 seconds. Just keep using as many of these as possible during this phase, and then we're going to get our Rupture up here in a second, right as it falls. So Rupture. And then we're back to like just the maintaining phase. You can use your procs, maintain this Envenom buff here. So now the next one is going to be dry again. So we kind of alternate Kingsbanes. The next one's going to be dry, no Shivs. But if you notice, we have Vanish up. We're going to stay Vanish for our Deathmark and double Shiv Kingsbane for the after this one right here. So that's Fatebound single target. The only difference for the last 2 bosses is that you would change to Caustic Spatter. Okay, Caustic Spatter is going to let you just splash damage. So for Nexus-King, the ads on the ad platform, And then for Dimensius, same thing pretty much. You can cleave off Dimensius for the ads, and then when you get to the little platforms, you cleave off the big ad onto the little ad. So that's build number 1 for 5 of the bosses. The next build we're going to have is, I just have it labeled as raid single target, but it's really like a raid semi-cleave. It's going to be Deathstalker. Again, this one will be linked in the description. Alright, so when you do this opener, this is going to be for bosses. Let's pull this up so you can see it. So this particular build here is going to be for bosses Soulbinder, Forge Weaver, which pretty much does those two. We're going to run a different build for Hunters. That's our third build. So Deathstalker's build that we're about to do now is for these two back to back. You want to make sure that you have Caustic Spatter on this for sure. Make sure if you're going to really lack some damage if you keep it on internal here. So Caustic Spatter, make sure that's there. So this one is a little bit different than your Mythic class build because you're not going to be able to just Garrote, Rupture, Garrote. You're really just going to keep your first bleeds on your main target. You're relying on Caustic Spatter for all the extra damage on the ads, okay? So pretend this is Soulbinder or Forge, and I'm going to show you kind of the opener for this build. So you're going to go Ambush, Garrote, we're going to Mutilate here, Rupture. I like to kind of get an Venom up, and then Thistleteeth, Shiv, Trinket, Kingsbane, Deathmark, and we just really kind of get as many Envenoms out again. Same thing here, Shiv on the back side of that, keep your Garrote up. And if you need to, you can pop the Thistleteeth during that as well, if you're losing a lot of energy for your burst. We got to make sure we keep our Deathstalker's mark up here. You get 1 free good proc of Phantom Knives when you reapply. It does just as much damage as Mutilate. It's cheaper energy. So now we need to reapply our Deathstalker's mark. So there it is, and you can see we're Caustic Spatter. Whenever you mutilate while you have a Rupture up, you get this green buff, and you're splashing damage onto ads. So this is why this build is really good for that. When the ads come out, generally I like to kind of pull energy, prep the bleeds on this main target, and right when I know ads are coming out, I'll kind of Caustic Spatter, and then I'll have big energy, and let's say they spawn, and now I can Phantom Knives and Venom. Phantom Knives and Venom. And then what's even better is, let's say there's ads, you can Caustic Spatter, Shiv, and Kingsbane, and that's also gonna like increase your damage on there. So outside of your burst windows, you're maintaining Deathstalker's markup, your Caustic Spatter. Make sure you keep that up. For this build, I didn't do it here, but for this build, you can always use your second Shiv when you Kingsbane, if you have it. Or you can save it if you know you're going to like a bigger ad burst base. Just kind of have to read it. It's not as like crucial to save as it is in Fatebound. Okay, and so the last build is going to be for Soulhunters. It's a very cleave oriented build. We're picking up Crimson Tempest on this. We're dropping Kingsbane. Again, this is for the Soulhunters, the 3 Demon Hunters. And I'll kind of show you more about that one in a sec as far as like the fight itself. But really, not too much changes here. It's still Deathstalker, so you're still going to want to apply Ambush to your 3 targets. I'm going to go over here. I'm not sure this is going to affect the damage, but we're going to pretend this is a 3. You're really going to want to be on Dusk Blaze the most, but at times you'll have to switch. So you want to come here, you're going to ambush, and then sometimes your tanks can get them pulled together fairly quickly where you can Garrote and Rupture one time. Sometimes you got to do it one over here and then come get bleeds up on this guy until they get stacked. But the biggest thing about this build, well, one of them is Phantom Knives and Crimson Tempest deal 30% additional damage while 2 or more enemies are afflicted with Rupture. So you want to make sure that at least 2, but preferably all 3 always have Rupture going. So that way when you Phantom Knives and your Crimson Tempest, they're going to be doing more damage. Crimson Tempest is going to be doing a lot of damage in this fight. So we're going to ambush the main target. We're going to make sure we Garrote here. And then if you're close enough, you can Garrote again and then pop your Rupture, and it should give you an extra stack. So you can just Rupture back to back. And then you can Phantom Knives, or Mutilate, get Caustic Spatter up, and then Crimson Tempest. Now they all 3 of them have all 3 bleeds, and then you want to Shiv, because your Shiv strikes additional targets, increases your bleed damage done by 30%. So it's going to be a big damage boost to all 3 targets. From there, you're just maintaining bleeds on as many as you can. Every time you get a Vanish out, don't use it when there's only one target. Try to use it when all 3 are coming back together, so you can just apply your AoE bleeds in one go. So here's our opener for this build. Oh, sorry. Make sure you put poison on. It will change your poisons. Do not forget, I forgot at some point in raid, so when switching. So this one we don't have amplifying. It's just deadly, okay? So here we go. We're gonna go ambush. Now we're gonna garrote again, and then we'll rupture. Now all of them should have everything. See right here. So at this point we'll Crimson Tempest, and then we can Thistle Tea Shiv. Now they're taking more damage. We can even Death Mark, and then Burn Phase here in this opener. Typically, if they're stacked together, we're actually going to be wanting Phantom Knives. And then you can just play hit one Mutilate to keep Caustic Spatter up. You'll want to, remember, ambush or vanish out when they're close, and then I kind of did it too early here, but that way you can get your, you see how I did it too early and I dropped. You want to make sure that when you vanish, you're getting as much value out of that as possible, so you got to make sure that they're together. Make sure your Garrote's not on cooldown like what I just did. So if you use Garrote and then you vanish, you're kind of going to be out of luck there. So make sure that it's off cooldown before you vanish, but you vanish, you ambush again, Garrote, ruptures, get them back up. But really, this build is just keeping up. At some point, you're going to have to, let's say you're fighting the boss, you have bleeds up on this guy. We want to get our Deathstalker's mark up too. So remember, in this build, we need to get that up. So let's get it up here. Time's buggy, so... There. Alright, so we have Deathstalker's mark up. Here's the phase where we can get all the bleeds. And we Shiv, get Crimson Tempest up there. And then your Phantom Knives, eventually you'll need to hit a Mutilate to get a Caustic Spatter refresh. So there we go. And then as you're doing this stuff, make sure you check. So like his Garrote's gonna fly off. We're still good here. And then we're gonna need to reapply Ruptures in a second. So we'll put reapply Ruptures. And it's okay if you use like ambushes on different ones. Just maintaining all of your bleeds on all the targets. And then Shiv when they're close. So like we Shiv now, they're all bleeding. And get your refresh of Crimson Tempest. We need to get a Deathstalker's mark up again. So this is really just maintaining like purple 1, 3. Your green Caustic Spatter. Your bleeds on all 3 targets. And that's pretty much that build. So that covers the 3 main builds you use for raids. For normal and heroic. Mythic is very similar in some sense, but timings are a lot different, and you might pick up some different things here or there. But let's jump into just very specific things about the bosses really quickly, and I hope this helps, guys. Let me know if it helps at all. And yeah, let's go and move to there. Alright, so for Plexus Sentinel, really the biggest thing for this one is your opener. You can go about it 2 ways. You can just run your opener right out the gate, do your opening sequence, and just kind of hope that you don't get the pulls. If you use your CDs and then you get pulls and you kind of have to get off the boss, that kind of definitely sucks. It's not a good feeling, but it happens at times. Or you can kind of delay your opener a little bit, just for, we're going to be about 8 seconds or so, and to see if the pulls, when they come out, if they're on you, and if they're not, then you just kind of let everything go. Otherwise, if they're on you, you kind of haven't really used everything yet, and then when you come back, you'll have some uptime. Specifically for like your King's Bane, so you can drive that up with the Venoms and stuff. Use your CDs as much as possible, and then when you're getting close to the burn phase for you, where with your spec, so about 30% or so, your damage amp is going to start kicking in. Just make sure you have like everything ready to go with your death marks, your vanish, your trinket, your King's Bane, so that way this last little phase here, when you're bursting, can actually go. You do a lot more damage that way. Sentinel's really straightforward. There's nothing too much about that one. We're gonna go to Loom. So for Loom, you're gonna open up pretty much CDs on cooldown. If you're using the Unyielding Trinket, you use it at the go. So just press it for your little minor boost that you have at the start with your opener, and then you're gonna save your Unyielding until. There's 2 ways to go about it. For normal, you're probably gonna want to use it once he drops down, because the damage is just gonna be too high. You guys are going to fly through that phase. On heroic, depending on your group, and that's the hard part about this, is sometimes your groups take longer, sometimes they're a little bit quicker. So you got to know kind of where your group stands, and if you're pugging, it's really just a roll the dice on that. Maybe you can feel it out from the previous boss. But on normal, once he drops down here, that's where I would use your Unyielding Trinket, let everything go, because this is a damage amp, and you're pretty much going to run it through to the end. If it's on heroic, you can make 2 decisions depending on how fast you think you're going to get to clear them. So you could pop it here, your trinkets. You're definitely going to want to use your Death Mark and King's Bane and all of that regardless. But as far as your unyielding trinket, you can pop it once he drops down, and then if it's a really slower group or like a longer time to kill, you'll get something back again with your CDs for your damage amps on your talents. Or you can just burst without and then really save for your cleave, your super burst at the end. Next up, we have Soulbinder. So Soulbinder, we're going to swap to Deathstalker for this one. You're going to open up, again, for me personally, I just open up with everything. I don't really save anything for the first ads, just because sometimes they mess up the ads. You're saving it and they don't actually blow up the canister. And so you kind of just waited for too long. So I like to just open up with everything. And then I'll pull energy and kind of try to set up like a caustic spatter right before the ads come out. And that way, when they do come out, you can kind of just let Phantom Knives and Venom go, Phantom Knives and Venom go. And you can do pretty good AoE damage with that. This one, it's same thing, just kind of pulling your CDs as you approach the phase where all the ads break loose. You want to have energy. If you can have a trinket up, that'd be really good. If you can have a Shiv and Kingsbane, that way you can do lots of caustic spatter damage to the mobs when they all come out, and that's gonna be really strong for you in Deathstalker as well. So just stay on the main target and keep your Deathstalker's mark up, and then Phantom Knives and Venom with caustic spatter up. All right, for Forge Weaver, I really like this fight. We're also in Deathstalker as well. This, you're going to open up, again, similar to Soulbinder. I really don't pull or wait for like ads to come out. It just takes too long, so I kind of just burst right the go. Just get in on CD, get damage rolling out. Now, as people start to drop ads, I'll start to wait a little bit, make sure I have prepped the boss with bleeds, start pulling energy, have a caustic spatter ready so that when the ads come out, you can just Phantom Knives and Venom, Phantom Knives and Venom. If you need to use a Thistle Tea, you can too. You'll get some mastery. Once the big ads comes out, just put some bleeds up, caustic spatter, and just finish. Some groups do it differently, like they'll keep the boss near the big ads, or they'll keep the boss near the little ads and pull the echo out. Ideally, you stay wherever you can cleave as Deathstalker, so just find whatever echo or the boss that all the little ads, if they're not dead, you want to stay there and just cleave them down. Normal, you're going to go through the boss really quickly, so it kind of throws off timing. And then heroic, again, you have that variance of like it could be a fast heroic kill or a slow heroic kill. But the biggest thing is just keeping an eye out on his threshold, and when you really want to make sure you have all your CDs for his amp phase and then the ending, because that's when your talent amps are going to kick in. All right, moving on to the Soulhunters. This, I run a different spec. It's kind of like way more cleave oriented. We have Crimson Tempest. For the opener, you really want to open on Duskblaze and kind of focus on him. You're going to ambush, Garrote, and Rupture, and make sure that all three of them have Garrote's Rupture on them. And then you're going to Crimson Tempest with Shiv. That gets all of them have taking more damage, and they have all the dots on them. You want to make sure you keep your Deathstalkers marked on pretty much whoever is going to be your main target within the three where you can cleave. So most of the time it's going to be Duskblaze, right? So like right here, he's in the middle, you can put it on him. You're hitting him while you're cleaving onto the others. Occasionally, depending on how your tanks pull them, if they keep them near each other, one might go away and they don't move the other two fast enough. You're going to want to swap and kind of just basically refocus on target until they group them back up again. And you want to be like hitting the mobs or hitting the pair of two instead of just the one. You always want to be aware there's more bosses just for your cleave. And then you got to make sure that you're constantly keeping up your Garrotes and Ruptures on all three. And then that will let your Phantom Knives, Crimson Tempest do more damage because of the build. And then just make sure when they stack up is when you Shiv. Don't Shiv if only one of them's out in the open. You want to make sure you Shiv with this build when at least two, but preferably three of them are stacked up. And you have all your dots. Like, don't Shiv if you don't have all your bleeds up yet either. Fractillus is pretty much like Sentinel, very straightforward, pretty much the exact same build, the exact same way to play it, and just burst right out the gate, use everything on cooldown. If you get lucky, like your CDs, depending on your time to kill for your groups, will line up with your damage amps and your talents once you're around like 30%. So, but yeah, for Fractillus, it's really just it's like almost like a target dummy. Just open, use everything on CD. Make sure your rotations are good. Make sure you Shiv and Shiv Deathmark, Kingsbane, Vanish, like everything we talked about in the rotation. your damage will kick in even more in the last little 30%. So if you're using Unyielding, you can try to time like your big 18 stacks around that time if you have a good feel for your group's kill speed. For Nexus, we're going to run Caustic Spatter with Fatebound on this one, and that's really only going to kick in for the add phase. I feel like this one plays out much more differently than like from Heroic to Normal. So Normal, you're probably going to skip a phase depending on your group. You're going to skip the add phase entirely, whereas Heroic, you probably are still doing the add phase, but it's also possible that your group skips as well. So you're going to open up like Normal, your normal burst rotation for Fatebound. On Normal, you're probably going to get the dragon to come down before you actually go to the adds. On Normal, depending how fast you do it, just use your trinket when the damage amp, when the dragon's being like siphoned by the other boss, and there's all the little swirlies around. On Heroic, though, you're going to get the dragon phase for a little bit, and then I like to make sure I have a Kingsbane ready to go with Shiv for the add phase. So like I target the Sentinel on the platforms, and put your bleeds on him, make sure you get a Caustic Spatter up, and then if you have Thistle Tea, great, Thistle Tea, Shiv, Kingsbane, and then basically maybe one Phantom Knives and Venom. Basically you're trying to get as much Caustic Spatter damage off the Sentinel for the adds on that platform. That'll increase your cleave damage there. For Dimensius, unfortunately I didn't get my recording program crashed out, so I haven't gotten any clips of that, but Dimensius kind of plays similar to Nexus-King. You're going to open up, really keep your Caustic Spatter on Dimensius as you're fighting, and that'll splash onto the adds. That first phase, you're kind of just focusing Dimensius down. You can put some ruptures up on the adds, but you really can just cleave off Dimensius. Then when you fly to the first platform, that's when you're going to want to make sure you're pulling for Kingsbane. Get your bleeds up. Once the adds spawn, you Shiv, Kingsbane, Phantom Knives, and Venom. You can cleave the adds there while getting down that boss. You probably can use your trinket here if it's like a lily for the first platform, and you'll have it up again for Dimensius. If you're running Unyielding, you're probably going to save depending on your group, because you want to have an Unyielding trinket for when you get down to Dimensius and the damage amp. And then once you get to Dimensius, you're going to let everything go when you go down there to be the Lust. Anyway, this is mostly just to get you started if you're starting out a rogue, or if you've been raiding, kind of want to squeeze out a little bit more damage, more DPS, or some better parses. But hope this helps, guys. Until next time, I'll see you later. Have a good one.